Hi there, welcome to my channel. Thanks for clicking on this video. This is going to be my home theater tour. Now you'll notice that I am wearing something different than what is in the actual tour videos that you'll see. The reason for that is because after going through all the footage and editing everything down, even with cutting some stuff out, the entire home theater tour was over 2 hours long, like 2.5 hours long or something like that. And I felt that was way too long for a YouTube video, especially the very first video that I'm going to upload outside of just my little intro video. So what I decided to do after the fact, why I'm shooting this, is to cut it into two pieces. So what you'll see is my first half of the video, which will talk about one side of my theater through my media and my equipment rack, and then kind of back to the projector and the back wall. And then the second half will be the front with all the main stage, speakers, and screen, my right wall with all my stuff over there, and then over to the back wall, and then the rest of the theater in terms of like seating and some of my little stuff that's out in the hallway before you get into the theater. So hopefully that works out pretty well with splitting it into two pieces, and that they'll both still be pretty long videos. They're both going to be like an hour or more between the two sides, but hopefully it's a little more watchable this way, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start as we enter in the home theater from the door. We'll start here on the left and kind of just go section by section throughout the room. So starting off, when you first walk in, this is our concession area. It's just a basic shelf from Ikea. I'll have to look it up. If it's still available, I can put it in the description down below. It's just a basic bookshelf. We just have our popcorn supplies, our buckets, our popcorn kernels, our seasonings, and then as you go down, we've got our candy and other snacks on here just for people, to pick and choose whenever they're down here watching a movie or TV or something with us. And then towards the bottom of the shelf, we've got all my scoops for the popcorn machine, some more buckets, and then all the cleaning supplies to clean out the machine, and trash bags for our trash can and things like that. And then on the far end here, of course, we've got our little paper towel holder for our napkins. And then as we move over, we've got the actual popcorn machine and butter machine. This popcorn machine, I believe, is Carnival Time popcorn machine. Again, I'll look up online, see if it's still in production. If it is, I'll put it in the description. But this is more of a novelty popcorn machine. We got this as a housewarming gift when we moved into the house about 10 years ago. And it's definitely served its purpose here, and we've gotten a lot of use out of it. We've probably used it hundreds of times since we got it. Overall, everything works pretty well with it. Since it is a novelty popcorn maker and not an actual commercial popcorn maker, it does have one issue where the inside brackets have started to sag on the kettle. So this part here is actually connected to a very thin sheet of metal at the top, and it sags now after all these years of use. So in order to actually use it, I've got to open the door and hold the kettle up like this. That way the gears connect and actually, we'll rotate the interior of the kettle so that the popcorn cooks evenly. Otherwise, it'll start to jam up, and certain popcorn kernels won't get moved around, and it causes some problems. But outside of that, it works flawlessly. No real issues other than just having to stick my hand in there and hold that up as the kernels start to pop. And then above that, sitting on top, is a butter machine. Don't really know what brand this is. Um, my wife got this as a gift for me back 5, 6 years ago. We had a restaurant here in town that was going out of business. So they had an estate sale, and one of the items in there was this. And she bought it, only paid, I don't know, like $20 maybe for it, and got it set up, works fine. The logo here, this insert, that's not a real popcorn company or butter company. Uh, Belmont, that's my last name. My wife works in graphic design, so she just made that up together and printed out a little sheet to sit in there, so that it looks kind of neat and goes with the aesthetic, I guess, of our home theater. And it works fine. Most of the time, we don't use the actual butter topping, mainly because I find we use flavorful and coconut oil to actually pop the popcorn. And with that seasoning, it tastes just like a movie theater without the butter. And if we use the butter, we use actual stick butter, real butter, not a synthetic butter like you would get at a big commercial movie theater, because that sort of messes with my stomach and upsets my stomach. So if we do use the butter, we'll use just regular stick butter. And then underneath down here, this is just where I've got all my supplies for making the popcorn. And then, of course, next to it, you might not be able to see on camera, but it's just our trash can that we use. So that kind of covers this section here. Right above all this stuff is a picture of Soldier Field. I am a Bears fan. I grew up in Chicago. So this picture here I actually got as a gift from my family. I believe it was either Christmas or a birthday gift years ago that they got for me. I also have a few other Bears related themes around the room that we'll get to as we go around. But this one just kind of fit nicely, of the stadium. And we just added up there. So then, with this section done, we're going to move over to what I call the media section. Okay, so now we're going to look at the media section of the home theater. We're going to start with this part right here, and then we'll pan over to the other stuff and talk about that. This is just a standard media shelf. I found the instructions for this on YouTube and on Google. There's a bunch of other videos out there and different things about how to do this. The long and short of it is there's 2x4s. They're just cut to length that go up almost to the ceiling. And then 1x2s for the shelves in the middle. You just measure out to make sure you've got the proper height for DVD or Blu-ray case or whatever media you're stacking on there. And then you just space them out. So on here, I've got this set up with my primary library, media collection, whatever you want to call it. And this stuff is the things I want to actually keep. Where on my other shelf that's behind me, when we get to that, is more about stuff that I just am going to watch and then probably get rid of. And the way I have this set up is it's broken down by format and then alphabetized within the format. So it goes from highest quality to the lowest quality. So up here, you've got the 4K UHD Blu-ray discs. The majority of all this, over half of what's on here is then just standard Blu-rays. And then underneath are DVD videos. And then at the very bottom shelf, I've got some Redbox movies that are still in the thin Redbox case that I haven't printed out new labels to put on my regular cases. And then a small section of snapper case DVD movies. A couple other things you'll notice on here first are the dividers. I made these myself. They're pretty simple to make. I'll kind of just pick this one up. So like this is the Ultra HD Blu-ray one. What it is essentially just a piece of cardboard from a box that I cut up, cut it to size of an index card, and then went online and just found the generic logo for the format, printed it out, just taped it all together, and now you have a pretty nice divider that is still flexible enough you can kind of bend it if you need to, but it's rigid enough that it won't get all beat up and, fall apart on you. So I have that. I have one here for the Blu-ray disc, and then I have the ones for each letter. And everything that I got for that was from the dollar store. So the index cards were from the dollar store. The little sticky letters that are on there were from the dollar store. And the cardboard that I'm using was actually just a post office box. The priority mail box, they're free. You can just go and get them from the post office. I got a couple of those and just cut them up to size to use in here. And then something else you'll notice on here, the majority of my cases are slim cases. The reason I did that is because I'm trying to maximize space. I really didn't want to go outside of the dimensions of this corner for all the media. So I purposely went out and bought slim cases and then transferred as much as I could into the slim cases to put on here so that I could maximize the amount of space that I had over, the specialty packaging or, DVD packaging, whatever. Now I do have DVDs that are in special packages that won't transfer over to a slim case. So, your bigger box sets like Lord of the Rings, this Fly set, the 007 set, these special like book style ones like Back to the Future or Aliens or Jurassic Park. Those I've left in their specialty cases. But everything else that was in just a standard case, like I'll grab here. This is was this Edge of Tomorrow, just in a standard slim case with the art on the inside. And what it also does is, since the big emphasis on my home theater that we're going to get into, especially with the equipment and with most of this media, like 90% of this stuff was bought used. So I can use, for example, this is Logan. I can use the slim cases for my used discs, which these are from Family Video when they went out of business. And I can just get a slim case. I can print the actual print the art that would be in the case on just a regular, piece of paper, and then slide it in here. And now I've still got the art and everything in a slim case, even for a used disc that didn't come with the art. So that's the primary section up here. And then about halfway down, it goes to DVDs. I do have a pretty large collection of DVDs as well. I find that with my equipment that I use, which I'll get to in a little bit when we get over there, the DVD quality is still pretty good with upscaling. Yeah, it's not going to be as good as Blu-ray or even a downscaled 4K disc, but the DVD quality is still good, and there are movies that never got released on Blu-ray or 4K that are only on DVD. And then some of them, in the case of like Heat is a good example, the color grading on the Blu-ray got changed. So keeping it on a DVD, even though the actual quality may be a little bit less than what the remaster on the Blu-ray would be, it keeps the more traditional theater color grading that wasn't touched up and changed around for the remaster. So that's why I have a lot of DVDs down here too. Some of them are duplicates that I have of other movies in Blu-ray or maybe on 4K, but most of them are individualized movies. So that's basically what's on this shelf here. So what I'll do now is we'll kind of turn over to the other side and show you the other half of what's on my media wall here. Okay, so now we're looking at this small media rack. This was just a shelf I got off of Facebook Marketplace, just a standard media shelf with the little sliding divider that you could use. Put some wheels on it from the hardware store, painted it black, and now I use it kind of as my secondary media shelf that has both some movies and some video games on here. So kind of going shelf by shelf. The top shelf has TV shows and special interest movies like sports related stuff or music related movies. And then I've got all my cult classic movies here. So, like the drive in uh, classics and sci-fi monster movies, horror movies, all real low budget stuff. And a lot of this is in the public domain now. And these packages, big multi-sets of like 50 or 100 movies were real popular like 20, 25 years ago when everything that's on here pretty much went into the public domain. They vary in quality from some being decent to some being like really bad quality. And I'm not talking about the production value. I'm just talking about the actual quality of the image and picture, the transfer on the disc. But it's neat to have those, just for some cheesy stuff to watch every once in a while. And then to the right of that are my HD DVDs. I do have an HD DVD player, which I'll get to in a little bit. And I've got a stack here of, I don't know, maybe 10 HD DVDs. I know it's a dead format, and Blu-ray is markedly better, and 4K is way better, markedly way better in most aspects of it. But it is kind of neat just to have these as a part of home theater history. And some transfers of stuff are a little bit better, in my opinion, like this Thing HD DVD right here. It's actually a pretty decent transfer. Yeah, the audio isn't as good, but the picture, might be a little more like the theatrical release versus what the remaster is done, because a lot of remasters, like I talked earlier about Heat, they touch stuff up, add noise reduction, add different color gradings in things to make it more modernized. So sometimes getting things like this that haven't been as touched up, or not touched up at all, are nice to have. And so it's interesting to just have a couple HD DVDs there. Then moving down to the next shelf, I've got my Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon collection on Blu-ray. And then the rest of these movies here are ones that I'll probably watch at some point and then probably get rid of, either sell them or trade them off. Maybe I'll keep them. I don't know. It's kind of up for debate on there. I just want to go through and watch them and then decide what I want to do. And that's, I've got like the Fast and Furious movies, which I've watched a couple of those over the years, but I've never been a huge fan of that series. But I decided, why not? I got these at a garage sale. They were all together. I only paid a couple dollars for I think this is up to like Fast and Furious 8 or 9 on here. So I know it's not the entire series, but it's the majority of them. And then just some other movies I've picked up over the years at thrift stores that I just kind of want to watch and decide if I'm going to keep or if I'm going to trade off or sell. And then underneath that, there's a few more movies, same thing, that I want to kind of look at and then decide if I'm going to keep. And then beyond that and then down for the next shelf are all my video games. PlayStation games, from the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox, like the OG Xbox, 360, Xbox One. I've got some PC games here. Just a whole mix of stuff that I've accumulated over the years. Some of these I play, some of them are just to keep for nostalgia reasons. For a good example, these two here, the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic games. I've had these since I had my original Xbox back in the early 2000s. So I don't really play these all that much, but it's nice to have, a little bit of nostalgia stuff from when I was younger here with me. Or another really underrated game that I really like, Sid Meier's Pirates. This is a remake of a classic computer game from Commodore, and I think maybe like IBM or DOS system as well. But this was a remaster they did in the early 2000s. One of my favorite pirate games, and holds a lot of memories for me, not even just this game itself, but the original Pirates game on a Commodore PC. Was some of the first stuff I ever played when my dad had a Commodore way back in the day. So I've got all these here, and then way down on the very bottom shelf are my wrestling DVDs. I'm a big wrestling fan, as well as being like a Bears fan and, you know, home theater enthusiast. I do like wrestling. I've always been a fan. So I have just some various DVDs that are out of print, that aren't on like the WWE network or on streaming platforms anywhere. Some of them got discontinued or um, whatever you want to say for different reasons, you know, because of the level of violence or blood and stuff in there. So it's nice to just have those to watch every once in a while when you can't find that content in a streaming form. So that pretty much covers this rack. Typically, as a side note, this rack is usually pulled in front of my CD collection, which I'll get to here in a second. I moved it out so it's easier to look at, but typically this is pushed up against the wall to save on space, and then the trash can that I have down here is usually sitting in this spot, bumped up against the popcorn maker that's behind it. So yeah, so that's this rack. So now I'll kind of move myself around here, and we'll take a look at my CD collection. Okay, so now we've moved over to the actual CD collection that I have. First things first here, these shelves that I have are actually two shelves that we found at a Goodwill a few years ago. I don't know what they're actually made for. I don't think they were made originally for CDs, but they're just these square shelves, and there's two of them stacked on top of each other. And we measured the wall, and it just seemed to be a perfect fit. They're just the exact length or width to fit right on this little wall that's here. So it worked out perfect. We bought both of them. I think they were each like $10 a piece when we bought them. Brought them home, stacked them, and they're great for CDs. Plus, it also gives me this space for my CDs, and then that's pretty much it. So once both of these are full, then I'm kind of done with collecting, and I'm going to have to get rid of CDs to get new ones. So that's the way this is. These CDs are also alphabetized, just A to Z on here, and then down at the bottom, I've got my compilation CDs and newer stuff that I have bought that I haven't categorized yet to put on the actual shelf, uh, in an, you know, the alphabetical order, and then also loose CDs that have thin jewel cases with a cover art, but don't have a standardized jewel case. They're just kind of stuck down there as well, and then some other random like VHS movies and whatever down there. And then up here at the top, you'll see I've got my theater calibration discs are up here. Some other bigger CD sets that don't fit in these shelves, like this, 70s Superstars of Soul set that doesn't fit on the rack here is up there, or like the Billy Joel Ultimate Hits collection. They're up there. And then I've also got cases like this. These are just for loose CDs. They've just got, you know, the sleeves inside that you can stick the CDs in. Most of these are from my childhood. So I had a lot of these from some as old as when I was in elementary school. And I keep them just for the nostalgic purpose. Most of those CDs are so beat up and scratched up, they don't even play. They either won't be read by a CD player to begin with, or it starts to play, but they're so scratched up they skip to the point that it's unlistenable. You can't even play it and listen to it. But I enjoy having those because, again, it's all these CDs I had when I was growing up, and some from my family that I kind of inherited. And it's just neat to have those, for a nostalgic purpose. And then I do have duplicates, ones that I can actually listen to that I got from thrift stores and wherever. But it is just nice to have those cases with all the old stuff in there. So that pretty much covers my CD collection here on this wall, and this kind of does it for the actual media collection right here. So next, I'm going to go over to the other rack that has my records and that sort of stuff on it. And then from there, we'll keep going through the rest of the theater room. Okay, now we're starting the rack with all the records and things on it. Starting at the top, I have these two pictures of Chicago Bears Hall of Famers. So we've got Gale Sayers here on the left and William Perry, the fridge, on the right. Both of those are autographed. And I actually got those from an auction back well before we even lived in this house. So it had to have been close to 15 years ago, or even longer than that. At our bowling alley here in town, they were running a promotion, like a fundraiser for the local animal shelter. They were looking to raise funds to build a new building. So one of the items that was in the auction were these two autographed Chicago Bears pictures. Being a big Bears fan, I couldn't pass it up and got them for relatively cheap. It was less than $100, may have even been less than $50 for the two of them. But it's just neat stuff I've had for years, and I enjoy having it up here. And then the very top rack, these are just some overflow records that I haven't put into the actual collection yet. And then I've got my mouse pad and controller and mouse for my gaming PC that's on my actual equipment rack to the right here. So that kind of covers up here. And then we'll kind of go down and look at the bottom shelves on this rack and go from there. All right, so now we've moved down a little bit on the shelf. This is my record collection. I went through a phase, I don't know, probably 10, 12 years ago, something like that, where I got really into records, and I found a pretty cheap little stackable stereo record player, like old RCA thing from the 90s at a thrift store, and got a couple records with it, and got kind of interested in that, and had a lot of fun talking with my family, some older people, about records that they had growing up and different things. So I got a pretty good collection of records. I've kind of filtered that down over the years. I've become less involved with the record side of things, and more so, if I listen to music, I listen to CDs now. But I still have, a pretty decent sized collection, for my space here. And these are all alphabetized. I have sort of these vinyl dividers that are in here, similar to what I did for the movies. I actually bought these off Amazon, like a big pack of like 100 of them of different colors, and then just got these cheap stickers from the dollar store, stuck them on there, and just have them divided. I have this top row divided out alphabetically. I haven't done the second row yet. I still need to do that. But I have those, and most of the records that are on here are used. Same thing, the theme of my channel, the theme of everything here is most of this is used. There are certain things that I bought new at the time, like this Guns N' Roses special edition record that has a t-shirt in there with it. I also have this Rolling Stones one, and a few others that we've gotten on like Black Friday over the years or something. But majority of these are used from a Goodwill, other thrift stores, or going to a record store and buying secondhand used items there. So that's basically my record collection for these shelves. I also have another big like trapper case binder of CDs. These are, again, loose CDs, but that case is so big, I just kind of sit it here instead of trying to fit it on that other shelf since it's so small. And then if we look down a little bit, I have another cheesy movie collection. This is 100 awesomely cheesy movies. This one is brand new in the package still. It's never been opened. And since this is an odd shape box, I just sit it here because it won't fit on the other rack. But again, that's just something neat to have. I don't know if I'll ever open it and watch it, or if it's just neat to have as a little decor item. And then the very last thing, this is just a couple more of my dividers that I made, including one to put in for the record when we take a record out to play. It shows, you know, in use or out. So you can slide it in there and then fit the record back in without having to mess around with trying to find the placement in there too much. So that is primarily what's on this rack. I'll get to the other stuff on the last two shelves in a second. One thing I did want to say, though, which I'll probably make a video on this down the road with more detail. The main reason we have these racks in here was that when we bought this house, this home theater was set up way differently. This room was actually used as an exercise room from the previous owners of the house, and it wasn't set up like this at all. So the walls were two-tone. This wall back over here was like a lime green, mint green color, and then the rest of the room was like a sky blue, baby blue color, which isn't the most inducive colors to have a home theater for contrast and reflections and things. And on this wall, outside of the color being all weird, were shelving units built into the wall, like you would find at a Home Depot or a Menards or somewhere. And they were just built straight in and attached to the wall. The problem was they were not secured properly. They weren't put into the studs, and they were using very cheaply made wall anchors that weren't made to hold up any real amount of weight. And when I first started my record collection and everything down here, I had all these records on these shelves that were built into the wall. I also had all my equipment and some other random stuff all just on these shelves built into the wall. And my theater room, instead of being lengthwise, was flipped the other way. So this was the back of the theater, and then the front would have been on the opposite side of this, is where the screen and the main LCR speakers and stuff were. And one day we heard this crashing noise, and we live in a rural part of central Illinois, and we thought, oh, someone got into a car accident. They ran off the road, or they hit a deer or something out on the county road that's down from our property. So we went out to look. There was nothing there. And we were like, oh, what was that crashing noise? Kind of investigating around the house, came down here into the theater, and the weight of all the records and all the equipment I had on those shelves completely ripped all the shelving out of the wall, and everything just crashed to the ground and went everywhere, you know, and created a huge mess, holes everywhere, ripped everything off the walls. It was a real big problem. So when we got that cleaned up, we decided to make the conscious effort to go out and buy these racks to put the equipment and the heavier stuff on. And these racks are from Walmart. We bought them after that had happened with the stuff coming off the walls. And they're not too expensive. They're less than $100 a piece. And we got those and used them here for this stuff because they have a weight rating of like 1,000 pounds, or even maybe more than 1,000 pounds. They're big industrial grade metal racks. And so we made the decision to do that to avoid having another situation where everything fell off the walls. And that also goes to another story about things falling down when I get to my projector here in a little bit, about why the projector is set up the way it is here in this room versus what it was when we first moved in. So yeah, that was just a quick story about why we have these shelves here. So now we'll kind of look down at the last little section of this shelf, and then we'll move on to the equipment rack. All right, so now we've moved down to the bottom section of this rack here, which this is just some overflow records and my record player and some different things. So starting over here, this is a Technics SL8300 record player. I bought that off of Facebook Marketplace back, again, before we even lived in this house. So that would have been probably 15 to 20 years ago, almost. And there was a lady moving out of her house here in town that had that lying in the closet, didn't want it anymore. So I messaged her and met up with her, went and bought it, and only paid like $15 for it, which it's a really good vintage record player. Not as good as, you know, some really super high-end model, but it's got the automatic start and stop, the auto raise and lower for the needle. It's got the counterweights on the back of the arm, so you can adjust the weight and the pressure of the needle going up and down. It's got a pitch adjustment with the light, so you can scroll back and forth to get the perfect 33 speed or 45 speed, depending what setting it's on. And then the lid that goes on and off. So yeah, it's a really, really nice record player. Again, I don't play records down here all that often. I do from time to time, but primarily my wife will listen to records up in our living room. She has just a record player hooked up there. So that's usually where the records get played. But this is a nice unit, and I could probably sell it for way more than I paid nowadays, especially with the resurgence of records over the last couple years. But it's nice. I enjoy having it here. On top of that is just a little sign that my family got me for, it was either Christmas or my birthday a year or so ago. Haven't found a place to put this up yet, so I've just kind of kept it sitting here. Behind that, if you can see, it's connected. I can't really move it, but that is a pile like audio amp for the record player to help boost the signal. Since this one doesn't have a powered amp in it, you need that to kind of get the volume up to a decent level for listening on your AV receiver. I got that as a gift for Christmas shortly after I got this record player from my sister-in-law. Used it without any issues ever since. To the left of that, this is the typical home theater audiophile thing, or maybe just a guy thing, I don't know. It's just a bin full of cables and other electronic stuff in there. So it's got like charging cables, phone cables, audio cables, some batteries, USB like extender cables and stuff. So just random things. And I've got more of that on my actual media shelf, or I'm sorry, the equipment shelf over there. But that's just a typical thing. You're always going to have that if you're into this type of thing, you know. And yeah, sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. It just sits there. And then here to the left of that, that's just a printout that my wife made of my home theater channel logo. The box that's behind it is just a box of comic books that I got when I was younger. I'm not a huge comic book fan. I enjoy like the comic book movies, and I'll read a comic book every once in a while. But these were all comic books that I got when I was younger. My uncle was a very big like comic book person, so he tried to get me into comics when I was, you know, in my early teenage years and, you know, late elementary school years. And so he got me a bunch of these comics, and these are some of the more valuable comics in my collection. Granted, none of these are worth all that much money. But some of these are a little bit nicer than just your everyday comic you would find. So I just keep them in here. So sometimes people can look at them, or it's just nicer to have them in here out of our main basement so that we hopefully will avoid any flood damage if it floods or anything like that. And they're a little bit safer here. Then down at the very bottom, I've got this office crate that just has extra records in there that are random, like singles, or records that only have the paper sleeve, not the actual sleeve with the album art and song list on it, is down there. I also have this old vintage disc washing, if I can get this out, disc washing record cleaning kit. This actually was my father-in-law's kit that he had for a long, long time. And I've just purchased newer solution to use, but it's just a really neat brush that you brush on the records to keep them clean. They make more modern versions of this, but this is a vintage one, probably from like the 70s or 80s. And I keep that down there. We use it to keep all the discs clean. And then This is just a little audio like speaker shelf made, made for like an Alexa speaker or something like that. And then we've also got these cases of 45s. I got these from a thrift store years and years ago, and they're all just full of random 45s in there of various artists and genres. And then to the left of that, if you can see over my leg, is just a Chicago Bears tin. I think this originally had like popcorn or something in it when I got it. But that is used for all my wall plug, like Sensi stuff and Glade plugins and wax melts and everything, so that the theater room smells good when I'm not making popcorn in here. So that pretty much covers this record shelf. So the next part will be moving over to probably some of the more interesting stuff here in the theater room, which is going to be my equipment rack with all my equipment on it. All right, so we have moved over to the actual equipment rack. A couple things real quick before I get into the stuff on here. The first thing, there is not a lot of space in this little area, especially with this display cabinet sitting right here. So I've got the camera set up in about the best position I can put it in to try and get some of this stuff, but I will be cutting in with close-ups of everything on here so we can get a little bit better picture of everything on the video. So there's that. The second thing is I'm not going to try and go into too much detail on a lot of this stuff, just because I plan on doing a standalone video for most of the items that are on the rack. So I don't want to take up too much time going into all that when I'm going to do more in-depth videos later on. So starting at the very bottom down here, I've just got these generic bins that are there. They just have a lot of like audio cables, video cables, batteries, stuff from my gaming systems, tools that I use, like wire cutters and strippers, hammer, screwdriver, whatever. And then other just like charging cables, of cell phone dock, whatever. Just random stuff that's down there. Nothing that's too important, so I don't need to spend a lot of time on that. They just sit down there for storage, and I take whatever I need out of it when I need it. Second thing, moving up one level. Off in the corner over here, we've got two monster surge protectors, power conditioners. I got the first one, this one down at the bottom. This is an HTS 2600. Got that from a yard sale along with a bunch of older speakers years and years ago, like some of the other stuff on my record shelf, things that I got before we ever even moved into this house. So I got that along with a bunch of speakers for like $20 or $25. And this in and of itself has been one of the best purchases I ever made for my home theater. I've had it for all these years, 15 plus years. Never had a single issue with it. It's probably saved some of my equipment a couple times when we've had bad weather here. So that's definitely been worth the price on its own, not to mention everything else I got in that yard sale that I ended up reselling to make profit. So that was a great pickup for me. On top of that is also a Monster HDP 1800, a little bit smaller and a little bit newer version of the other Monster surge protector that's there. Again, this has been great. I've got this off of one of my favorite sites, which you're going to see with some of this other equipment here, Shop Goodwill. So I got this for, I think, $20 plus shipping. So right around probably like $30, $35 all in with shipping and tax. Again, been great. Just like the other Monster power supply surge protector there. Never had an issue. I ended up getting that because I had more equipment that I had acquired over the years, and I ran out of plugs. So I just wanted something else that would help save my equipment. If we had power supply issues at some point. It's worked really well. I've never had any issues with it, and another great bargain that I got off of the Goodwill website. And then real quick, I know you can see back there, there's cables hanging down. The cable management isn't the greatest here. It is something that in the future, if I decide to redo this area, I'll probably try and do something better with the cable management, uh, and do something with like mesh sleeves or something that kind of like hide the cables better back here. It is kind of just what it is at this point with that, and no one really sees it. And I'll tell you why in a minute when I get done going through all this. Um, but I understand, so I don't need to see a bunch of comments about cable management. I get that that's something I need to work on in the future if I redo my equipment rack here. And then if you move over, I just have another little container with some random stuff in there, like hard drive cables and scissors and a few other random things. And then a box of batteries, for remotes and other things. You never know when you're going to need them. And then to the left of that, this is my gaming PC. Again, not going to go into a huge amount of detail, especially since there's so many components in here. But most of this stuff I bought from Shop Goodwill and Facebook Marketplace, eBay, things like that. And it's been a hodgepodge, work in progress PC. It's gone through several iterations over the years, starting with very low budget friendly products. And then as the years have gone on, I've kind of upgraded and bought more serious hardware and things at a discount, and then just added it in there and got a new case and whatever. But this thing's, a really good PC, a good value for what I have. I don't have all the specs. I know there's a 1660 Super graphics card in here. It's got solid state drives, an M.2 boot drive in here, 8 gigs of RAM, or no, I'm sorry, not 8, 16 gigs of RAM in here. I forget the processor. It's an Intel i5, a little bit newer version, not the newest, but a little bit newer than my original one I had in there that was like 15 or 12 or 15 years old when I put it in. So this thing runs most modern games, unless it's extremely demanding, on high or ultra settings. And, certain things, like if it has a special hair effects or something like that, you turn that off. But I can get easily 30 frames at most high or ultra settings on most games. And if I knock the settings down or the game isn't as demanding, I can get 60 frames per second in most games. So definitely a very good budget PC, and still has enough horsepower, to run, moderate video editing, and stuff like that on there. So this has definitely been a really good pickup and project over all the years that I've had it. So now moving up one more level to the middle here, we'll start here on the left. These are my two gaming consoles, my primary gaming consoles that are on here. The one on the bottom is a PS4 Pro. I believe this is an earlier generation PS4 Pro, even though I've cleaned it and, done a lot of upkeep on it over the years. This thing still does get extremely loud when it's playing a pretty intensive game. Something like God of War, Ragnarok, or something of that nature, whether it's got the disc in or not. If it's a digital game or a disc game, doesn't matter. This thing sounds like it's going to take off and fly away sometimes. That's just the nature of the older gen PS4 Pros. Still works great. Got this off of Facebook Marketplace. Guy, I think he was in college, selling it, looking just get some extra money for whatever. And got it for, at the time, this was 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I only paid like $100 for it. So definitely a good pickup. And then above it, I've got an Xbox One X. I don't have the newest generation of systems, so no PS5s, no Xbox Series S or X consoles. But I do have the One X. That one, again, got it off Facebook Marketplace. There was a kid who was, I think, 16, and he was trying to get money to buy his first car, and his mother actually drove him to meet me to buy that. I ended up getting this plus a handful of games for, I think, $100. Originally he wanted 150, and I was able to negotiate him down to like 100. And yeah, do I feel kind of sad taking advantage of a 16-year-old kid at the time? Yeah, kind of, but I guess it's a life lesson, to learn about negotiating and whatever. Uh, but I got that, and I got a handful of games. I ended up selling the games because I didn't really care for the ones that he had with it, and I ended up making somewhere like $30 or $40 back in the games that I sold. So I ended up basically getting this after I sold the other games for like $60, something like that. So an extremely good deal, an extremely good pickup. And honestly, I probably use the Xbox more than the PlayStation just because of Game Pass, you know. But both these systems have been great. I game when I can. And since I don't have an actual 4K projector in the theater, I'm not really going to benefit from having the newest consoles and having, 4K 60 or 4K 120 and all this stuff. So just having this generation of system with the highest, quality I can get out of this generation works well enough for me for what I'm doing here. And you'll also see on the top here, and then there's another one kind of tucked back there that you can't see on this camera. Just some external hard drives to save all my games that I download and install and whatever. And I think both of those were new. I don't think I bought those used. I think I bought those on Amazon years and years ago during like Prime Day sales or something. Then over to the right, this is one of the newest additions to my equipment rack that I got last year, around the summertime of last year. This is a Rotel RSX 1562 receiver. Now, again, I bought this online on eBay, and I only spent $80 for this. It was $80, I believe, plus free shipping on there. Somebody was selling this because they couldn't get it to turn on. And so it's heavy. I mean, this thing weighs, I think, like 30 pounds. It's a pretty solid piece of equipment. So I essentially paid primarily for shipping plus like, I don't know, $25 on top of it for the person, to make off of the shipping cost. And it didn't turn on. So I know some moderate electronics stuff. I'm not a technician or anything like that by any stretch. I can work my way around minor things. So I wasn't confident in dealing with the power supply issue on this after I opened it up and looked at it. So I found here in my small little rural town, there is a guy who does electronics work for like TVs and computers and stuff. So I called him up and then I met him, went over to a shop here in town, brought the unit in, talked to him. He ended up going through and replacing the power supply that needed to be replaced, along with some fuses that were in there. Got it up and running completely like normal. He actually did some other little maintenance, like these knobs were kind of messed up, which I didn't realize because it didn't turn on. So I couldn't I didn't know if they were actually messed up or not. So he was able to kind of fix all this. All told on that, I spent $100 on him fixing that. So $180 all in for this receiver, which at the time this came out, which I believe was like 2013, this receiver I think was like $3,000 or $4,000. It was one of the highest quality receivers you could buy at that time. And ever since it got up and running, it replaced my previous receiver that was in here, which was just a Onkyo receiver. And this is great. Puts out, I think it's like only 100 watts RMS, but it puts out 100 watts with all speakers driven, not just 2-channel. So it can put out 100 watts on all 5 of my speakers and subwoofers that I've got going all at one time. It's a powerhouse. It's a workhorse. It's really good. Uh, it's very basic. It doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles. It's what you see is what you get. It has one of the most generic um, setup menus and menu systems that I've ever seen on one of these. Very bare bones with all that, but very high quality sound, very minimal distortion. I can crank this thing up and the speakers will distort a little bit, but you can tell it's the speaker, not the power coming out of this. It's clean, it's awesome. Um, Again, I only have a 1080 projector, so I don't need 4K or anything like that. It will pass through a 4K signal if you manipulate the signal the right way to get it to come through here. But otherwise, it's not a native 4K receiver. But it does everything I ask of it. It has enough inputs to cover everything I've got here, and it's definitely been great and one of my favorite pickups recently that I have here. So now we'll move up one more level. This is all my media players basically on this level. So starting right down here, this is an Oppo BDP-83. Another secondhand item, theme of my channel. Got this off eBay for $75 or $80 or $85, something like that. Free shipping again. Someone did not have the grounded power cable, which is just one you can get from any PC, any big electronics equipment will have it. You can get them from like the thrift store. I've gotten them for like $1 at the thrift stores before. The seller said they didn't have a power cable. They couldn't turn it on, so they didn't know if it worked. So they were selling it as is. Again, this is a pretty heavy piece of equipment, not as heavy as the receiver, but this thing's like 15 pounds probably. So again, I was basically paying for shipping plus a little bit on the top, for the seller to make some profit off of it. Didn't turn on, brought it here. I got a spare cable from the thrift store, like I said, for $1. Plugged it in, works flawlessly. No issues whatsoever. It's been a great, Blu-ray player for me. Again, as I've said, I don't have a 4K projector, so I don't really need 4K, even though I do have a 4K player up here, which I'll get to in a second. But this is usually my primary Blu-ray player and DVD player for the upscaling. Oppo is a great company that provides really quality products. So this thing is my generic, everyday player for anything that's really not 4K content. And it's been great. I've never had a single issue with it, and definitely worth what I paid, and then some. And I got this again last year, in the spring or summer of last year. Going above that, we've got the Panasonic UB420. So for those in the know that's in the circles for like home theater and media, this is the lower level version of like the Panasonic like I think it's like 9000 or something, which is their real high end like $1,000 4K player. This one is kind of the more bare bones basic entry level version of that. And again, I don't have a 4K projector, but the reason I bought this, which again bought on eBay, um, it actually had a dent in the top, so it was being sold as damaged, and they said it worked. The seller said it worked, but it had damage to the case. So again, I got this for about $70 or $80. With I think there might have been shipping on that one, but it was a lower cost than what the other shippers were selling it for. So maybe like $100 total, maybe less than that. But the reason I got this is because these Panasonics have really good tone mapping abilities. So I can put a 4K disc in that, and it has a setting to downscale the 4K into a 1080 signal, and the tone mapping and the gamma doesn't get all funky on it like if I tried to play a 4K disc on my Xbox One. So that is basically my 4K player, and it will tone map perfectly, or at least good enough to the eye that it doesn't look weird when I play it, and it will play great on my projector. So that's the whole reason I have that. And every once in a while, I will play Blu-rays or DVDs in there, just to change it up, between my Oppo and that. But primarily, that's a 4K player for my limited amount of 4Ks that I have. I have noticed, just on a quick aside, that does have a kind of sensitive laser and disc tray mechanism that's in there. So if you get a disc that's really scratched up that isn't really going to read properly, it will cause the tray and the laser to lock up. And I've had to do that a couple times where I've had to actually take the tray off and actually pull the disk drive out and manually open it and get the disk out and shut it and kind of do a factory reset to get everything to work again. Which I don't know if that's just a typical thing with these players, or if that's because the dent that was on this was right over the disk drive. So I don't really know, but I have had that come up. And usually, if I see a disc that is kind of scratched up, I've learned I'm not even going to stick it in there unless it's a 4K disc. Then I may just get rid of it and try and find another one. But if it's a Blu-ray, a DVD, and it looks kind of sketchy, like it might cause that issue, I'll just put it in the Oppo because the Oppo never has an issue with that. So again, those are my two primary media players, which are great. If you go over to the side, you'll see this is an HD DVD player. This is the Toshiba HD42. I used to have a different Toshiba, which I can't remember what it was, but I decided to keep this one and I sold the other one. I got this at a Goodwill in one of the neighboring towns nearby where I live. $10. Uh, and it was also in our area, the Goodwills do color of the week. I know that doesn't happen in all the markets, but in our area, they do color of the week. So the color of the week sticker that's on there will be half off for that week. So this was $10. The color of the week sticker was on it. So I paid $5. And the other thing that got me with this is it came with the remote, which usually is a bit of a crapshoot when you go and get stuff secondhand, whether it's through Facebook or eBay or a thrift store. There's a very good chance, like 70-80% chance, that when you buy a CD player, DVD player, whatever, it's not going to have a remote. And that one did. And since that had the remote, those remotes were kind of universal. They would work on other players. And I have a Logitech Harmony that's over when I get over to my other part of my room here that I use for all my equipment. So I didn't need that remote. So I took the remote from this, paired it with the other HD DVD player, and sold that one and decided to keep this one. The reason I did that is because this HD DVD player is one of the earlier generations of HD DVD players from Toshiba. So it only goes up to 720. It doesn't go up to 1080. The other one did. And so on the resale market, the 720 players go for less than the 1080 players. And I figured, why not? I hardly ever use this. Like you saw earlier, I only have like 10 or 12 HD DVDs, and some of those are duplicates of Blu-rays, so I'm not always going to watch them. So I thought, why not keep the 720, sell the other one that was going to get me more return, on my investment. And it's worked. It's worked great. I've never had an issue with it. Um, these units also, outside of playing HD DVDs, these Toshiba units, this one and the other one, actually do a good job of upscaling. So sometimes, depending on the DVD I'm watching, I may throw it in there to watch because it does sometimes, at least to my eye, seem like it's upscaling a little bit better. But maybe that's just a, fool's gold kind of thing, just, whatever. Owner's kind of eye thing because I got a good deal on it. I'm seeing that. But again, really good player, especially for the price that I paid for it. And then above that is a JVC CD player. This is the XL V261 CD player. Got this off of Shop Goodwill again. Paid only, I don't even know if I paid $20. I'd have to go back and look at the history for it. But we'll just say, for argument's sake, $20 plus the shipping, which was another like 10 or something on there in tax. So all in, probably like $35, somewhere around there. Didn't have a remote, but again, I have the Logitech Harmony remote that I use. So I was able to just program it in there, no issue with it. That's been great. So when I do listen to CDs, I listen to that as my dedicated CD player. It had really good reviews when I looked up the Google reviews before I made the purchase. And again, it's been great. It's only a single disc player. I didn't want one that had multi-disc because I'd had those in the past and I'd had issues with it of disc getting stuck and the tray just rotating and not being able to stop and whatever. So I wanted just a straight single player with a good DAC in there, which this one has. And it has both the analog out or it has the optical out. Or maybe it's a coax digital out. I can't remember. But it's got analog and a digital out. So I can either use the DAC that's built into this player or I can just feed it down and use the DAC built into the Rotel. So that's been great, and another good value and decent piece of equipment that I've gotten, secondhand through Shop Goodwill. And then real quickly up on the very top, I've got just my keyboard for my computer. I've got a couple sets of headphones and portable CD players that I got. These headphones in this big case here, which I'll kind of go into in a different video, those are Shure headphones, pretty high quality set of like studio monitors that I got for a pretty decent price through Facebook Marketplace. And then a couple of just personal CD players up there that I listen to, if I decide to take something with me on the trip or vacation, or if I'm going somewhere, I'll use those. I've also got my little Wi-Fi dongle up there, antenna that's hooked into my PC. I've also got my little audio sound level meter. I use this when I calibrate my speakers, and I've just got this little tripod that I end up sitting, by my primary listening position, and I calibrate all my speakers with that. And then way off over here is just a little container of Xbox and PlayStation controllers, just extra ones that I've acquired over the years, again through online purchases or things that I've bought secondhand through Facebook, or when I bought, one of the systems or something, it'll have extra controllers. So I just keep them up there and will sometimes use them, or sometimes I'll just use my main wireless controllers that are over there. And then just way off in the back of no real consequence, but I've got some hangers that are up here just to hang headphones or different things up there. I've got all my cables because my cables actually go up for my speakers and my HDMI cable and all that runs to my projector. All goes up through the drop ceiling that's up here and over to the corresponding speaker or the projector or whatever. So they just run up in the far corner here. And then I have, which I'll talk about now, but I'll also mention about it when I talk about the room specs at the end. I do have an LED light strip, which you've probably seen on these videos, and they kind of cause a weird glare on certain things. This is something I actually bought on Amazon. Got it on a Prime Day deal, and I bought I think it was like a 200-foot or something roll of the LED strip lights, and I just ran them along the top of the theater, so then I can change the color or dim or brighten the room or turn them off completely as needed. And I just put the main receiver back over here against this wall, kind of out of the way where people will see. And then one other thing, which I'll show on B-roll footage here in a second. What I mentioned about my cables and all my equipment back here, why I don't really mind so much that my cables are a bit sloppy, back there, is if you've noticed up on some of these other videos, there's this wire running along near to the ceiling on just some hooks that are in the walls with eyelets. That actually has not really a curtain, but I guess it's basically like a curtain, but it's a heavier material. that runs the length. It's got panels. And so I can slide those panels all the way to the wall. And in this little gap section, it will completely cover the entire section. So if I really want to, if I don't want people to see back here, I'll just slide these curtain panels down and it'll block everything out over here and no one will be able to see what's back here. So, that's why I'm not as concerned about my cable management, because when I'm just down here by myself, I have the curtains pushed all the way open so I can see what's going on back here, and it makes it a little bit easier with the remote uh, to hit the corresponding equipment with the signal. But if I really want to, if we're having people over, or if I'm really trying to go for a more theater aesthetic for some reason, I'll pull those closed and no one's going to see anything that's going on back here. But other than that, that pretty much covers. I know this video is probably gone like 45 minutes or close to an hour already, and that kind of just covers this side of the room. So now we'll kind of cut over and I'll show you this display cabinet, and then we'll get over to my first set of surround speakers and my projector and all that. So we've now moved over to the back wall of the home theater, and I'm going to talk about this. This is probably the most sentimental thing that I have down here in my home theater. This is a display cabinet that my grandfather used to have. And I know it's a big glass box, basically. So that is not good for sound reflections and for light bouncing off of it. I get that. But the sentimental value outweighs all that stuff for me. So, like I said, this was my grandfather's. He is basically where I got my collecting stuff from, for my sports memorabilia and my physical media and just my other random, figures and stuff you'll see when we get over to the other wall. It all kind of stemmed and started from him. He collected a lot of model planes and tractors and things of that nature, because he grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania before joining the Air Force. And then from the Air Force, he joined American Airlines, moved around the country, and then ultimately settled in Chicago. And that's where my parents met and where I grew up, and that's the reason why. But he would collect planes and tractors and other models and toys of like equipment that he used when he was growing up and through his professional life. And he would store all that in this cabinet. And when he passed several years back, I asked and was really hoping that I could get this from my family and put it in my home theater. And like I said, I know it's a big glass box, not the greatest for acoustic reasons here in a home theater, and not the greatest for light reflections and other things like that. But like I just said a few minutes ago, the sentimental value really outweighs everything else for me with this. So yeah, so this I didn't pay anything for other than the gas to drive up to Chicago to get it from my grandparents' house. But I use it much in the same vein that my grandfather did. I have, stuff on the top shelf, wrestling memorabilia, with my WWE title belt, some autographs of different wrestlers, ticket stubs for different sporting events and wrestling events that I've been to. The shelves underneath it, I've got Bears memorabilia of my, old Brian Urlacher jersey that I got when I was in high school. A picture of me and my dad at the last Bears game when they played the Rams before they moved out of St. Louis. An autographed football, or actually a couple of those in there. Some anniversary collection Chicago Bears beer and soda cans. A Chicago Bears divisional champions hat from 2005 that I got when they won the division that year. Down below that, just some other, random Bears stuff that I've collected over the years. Ticket stubs from going to the Bears games with my dad. Then down at the bottom, I've got some other Bears and baseball and wrestling memorabilia from the Cardinals. Cardinals are like a secondary team for me. since I live in the St. Louis market, basically for baseball, we get a lot of Cardinals press and coverage down here. So by proxy, I've come to enjoy the Cardinals a little bit. I've seen them win a couple World Series since I've lived down here. I've been to a bunch of the games through like corporate events and stuff. So, it's been nice to have that. And so I've got a minor allegiance to them a little bit, if the Chicago teams are eliminated from playoff contention or something. And then I've got, again, ticket stubs down here. I've got the Chicago Sun-Times special newspaper when the White Sox won the World Series in 2005. I bought that specifically to keep as a keepsake after they won, and also like memorabilia scrapbook thing that the team put out years later about the 2005 White Sox, and some other random stuff. There's also a sentimental gift, or sentimental item, I should say, a little bit for me, but more so for my wife. There's a baseball that's down there that was signed by the St. Louis Cardinals team back in the, it's either, I think in the 80s. I don't know if it's got the year on there, but if you look at the players that are on it, you can probably figure out roundabout what season it was from. But that was actually my wife's father's baseball that he had before he passed when he was growing up, because he was in a really bad car wreck. And his mom, so my wife's grandmother, sent a letter to the Cardinals team asking them for, their support and prayers to try and get him through his recovery from the car wreck. And all the players on the team that year signed that baseball and sent it to him. And so we've kept that ever since my wife got possession of it, and we decided it would fit to get put here with all the other memorabilia that's in this cabinet. And then down at the very, very bottom is just some other random stuff. There's some things from my grandfather's house down there, like the beer stein and the tractor hat and a few other things, the knife that's down there. And then just some other random stuff, yo-yo and a few other things. My grandfather's Letterman jacket letter is sitting down there too, which has, some sentimental value to me. So all in all, I understand this isn't the greatest thing to have in a home theater, but I got a lot of sentimental value and memories, and my wife's got sentimental value in the items that are in here. So even though it's not the greatest for acoustics and video quality things with light, it's kind of out of the way enough that it doesn't affect things too much. And we don't really have another place in the house to put it. So I definitely wanted this down here. And like I said, the sentimental value outweighs some of the other negatives that may come up with like audio quality and everything. And then real quick, just on the very top, you can probably just barely see over the top of the cabinet. That's a Soldier Field sign. The 246 miles is the exact mileage from where we live at our house to Soldier Field. My family got that for me as a Christmas gift or a birthday gift. I can't remember which one. Years and years ago when we bought the house. So that was like a housewarming gift that we got with it. So, and then you can kind of see one of my speakers over there, which I'll get to in a minute. That's my left, or I guess technically my right rear surround. And I'll get to that when I get to the major stuff on this back wall when we cut over here in just a second. So yeah, so that's basically the cabinet. And then you can kind of see we've got a dog bed and stuff here in the corner for our dog when he comes down here. If he doesn't land the couch, he'll land the dog bed. But that pretty much covers all this. The strip lights that are in there, real quick, got them off Amazon. Just a cheap little roll, and just stuck them in there so that I can turn the lights on and off when I'm trying to show this off to people. And it just looks nicer than not having a light in it. So yeah, so that covers this. So now we'll kind of pivot over again, and we'll get to the main stuff here on the back wall. Okay, so we've moved down just slightly a little bit, and we're going to talk about the rear surrounds and my projector here, and some of the decor that's on this back wall. First things first, the surround speakers. This is my right surround. These are Polk Audio FXI A4s. They're a bipole dipole speaker. And I know in modern surround sound and home theater formats, the emphasis is more on direct firing, direct radiating speakers, not a bipole dipole speaker. And I understand that. But for the way my room here is set up and the placement that I had to put the speakers and different things here, these seem to work really well. They seem to work the best for what I wanted to do. And I originally had the A6s, which are the next size up. They're a little bit bigger. But I found in terms of the frequency response and the audio levels and things I was getting out of them, that the A4s did just as good a job as the A6s. And since they were smaller, when I put them up here, the A6s were kind of too big and they were bumping up against the top of the media or the display case that's here. So the A4s, being a smaller profile, fit up there better. And I didn't feel like I was sacrificing any audio quality by using those. So I ended up selling the A6s and just keeping the A4s back here. And I've got both of them. One's here and one's over there. They're lined up directly with my left and right speakers in the front of the theater. Now, one thing I did do that's kind of weird and against what normally would be done, I have these set in bipole mode, not dipole. They're in bipole mode. And I actually swapped the left and the right speaker. So this one actually on the back label says the left, which should technically be over there. And then that one would be the right, that should technically be over here. The reason I did that is the way these are set up is they have a woofer and tweeter on one side, and then I think just a tweeter on the opposite. So I wanted it where the woofer and tweeter were facing the listening positions and not facing outward to the outside wall. So that's why I flip flopped them. And I feel like that provided a much better, more immersive sound stage and everything for how these speakers are set up. I just felt like with the woofers and tweeters facing outwards, they were just going too far, like going out of the listening zone, listening area where people normally sit, and it didn't give me the sound stage that I was looking for. So those are those speakers. I've got one on each side here. Then I'll back up a little bit. You'll see some artwork and different things that are on the back wall. Maybe kind of hard to see on this camera, but you'll see when I get closer. These Lord of the Rings pictures, there's one here and then there's one off to the right you probably can't see yet. You'll see that when I move the camera down. Those were drawn by one of my wife's good friends during high school years. She's a big Lord of the Rings fan, and he is a pretty decent artist. So he drew just in pencil the covers for just the Lord of the Rings. I think this is. I don't know if that's the Fellowship or Return of the King or which box art this is based off of, but he drew that one and he drew the Return of the King box art, poster art cover over there. He just drew them, and my wife had them framed, and she used to have them up like in her bedroom, and then took them with her to college when she was in college. And once we bought this house and had the theater room down here, we thought, why not? It fits in with the aesthetic, and where else are you going to put something like that? So they fit. And the first time he came over, he actually got a chuckle and a laugh out of that because he figured they would have been thrown out or something by now. But yeah, they fit in and it works really well. And then in between those two pictures, I've just got some artwork and autographs for various wrestlers, some of the guys that I've enjoyed over the last 10 years or whatever of watching wrestling. And these two top ones, you can't really see the one on the right. Those were just art prints that I got through WWE Shop several years back. The ones under it are autographed pictures. Those are ones from live events that we went to and, got the autograph from the actual wrestlers. And then underneath that is a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood poster we got that from the movie theater in town when that movie first came out. They were running a promotion that opening weekend where when you went, you got these little mini posters for free when you bought the ticket. So we had one of those and we just figured, why not? We'll frame it, we'll put it in here. And again, it kind of fits with the aesthetic of everything. So yeah, that's kind of the artwork back here. And then right up here, which I think I'll move the camera so we can get a little bit closer to talk about it. But this right here is the main video projector, the main key piece for all that here in the home theater, which give me 1 second and we'll kind of slide down so you can get a little bit closer look at it.